She stood in the bedroom doorway, gripping the sheet of paper so tightly her nails dug into her palm. Her heart hammered as if trying to escape her chest and flee from what she'd just read. The room smelled of old wood, lavender, and something else, a quiet, invisible pain they'd buried for years beneath polite smiles and Sunday dinners. "Did you know?" Her voice trembled, not with fear, but with fury. With betrayal. His face went pale. He didn't even pretend not to understand. He just lowered his eyes to the floor, as if the answer to the question that had just shattered nearly 40 years of marriage lay hidden between the floorboards. "Yes," he said quietly. "I knew." And that was enough. One word was all it took for her world to begin cracking apart. Margaret had always believed their family was the picture of stability. 2 sons. A house with a porch and ancient oaks in the yard. 38 years of marriage without explosive fights or dramatic, "I'm leaving forever" exits. They'd weathered the deaths of parents, a financial crisis, John's heart surgery, and each time, they'd emerged stronger. Or so she'd thought. But now, standing before her husband, she felt that entire illusion collapse. The letter, found by accident in his desk drawer, was addressed to their eldest son, Michael. It began, "By the time you read this, I'll be gone," and what followed was a will. Not a legal document, but a letter. Personal. Intimate. And in it, he left everything, the house, the savings, even the family photographs, to Michael. Nothing for Ben. Nothing for her. "Why?" she whispered. "Why did you decide he's the only one who deserves it?" John slowly lifted his head. There was no remorse in his eyes, only exhaustion. The deep, lived-in weariness of a man who'd carried a burden no one else had seen. "Because he's the only one who stayed," he replied. The words hung in the air like dust after a blow to an old rug. Margaret wanted to argue, to scream, to remind him that Ben was their son too, that he was just different. But a lump lodged in her throat, and she couldn't speak. Ben had left home at 22. No shouting match, no slam door, just a packed suitcase, a hug for his mother, and the words, "I'll come back when I figure out why I should be here." 15 years had passed since then. He called every few months, came for his grandmother's funeral, but never stayed long. He lived somewhere on the West Coast, worked as an interior designer, married, then divorced. Margaret knew it all from brief texts and rare photos on social media. Michael, by contrast, had stayed. He'd joined a local law firm, married a woman from the next town over, and had 2 children. Every Sunday, he came for dinner with his family. He helped his father fix the roof, drove his mother to doctor's appointments when her knees started giving her trouble. He was reliable, predictable, safe. But safety isn't always love. And predictability isn't always loyalty. The next day, Margaret didn't make the Sunday roast. She just sat in the kitchen, staring out the window at the last autumn leaves clinging to the oak branches as if afraid to fall. The doorbell rang. It was Michael. "Mom, are you okay? Dad said you two had a fight." She looked at him, tall, neat, with the same furrow between his brows as John. And suddenly, she knew. He knew. He'd known all along. "Did you read the letter?" she asked directly. He froze, then nodded. "He gave it to me a month ago. Said he wanted to make sure I'd handle everything properly. Without fuss. Without drama. And you didn't even mention Ben?" Michael looked down. "Mom, Ben hasn't lived here in 15 years. He didn't help, didn't call, didn't care. He just disappeared. And I was here. Always. That doesn't make him a stranger." Her voice cracked. "He's your brother. A brother who chose a different life." Michael flared. "And honestly, Mom, I'm tired of being the one who holds everything together. Who shows up every Sunday, fixes your car, listens to you and Dad argue about retirement accounts. And him? He sends a Christmas card and thinks that's enough." Margaret fell silent. She wanted to defend Ben, but part of her understood Michael. She understood the pain he carried, the pain of the invisible hero whose efforts were taken for granted. "But have you ever asked yourself why he left?" she said softly. Michael didn't answer. That evening, John found her on the porch. He sat beside her without a word. For 10 minutes, they sat in silence, listening to the wind rustle the fallen leaves. "I didn't mean to hurt you," he finally said. You took away my choice, she replied. You decided for all of us. For me. For Ben. Even for Michael. You thought you knew what was best. Maybe I did, he sighed. Michael is solid. He'll take care of the house, the traditions, you. What if I don't want traditions? She turned to him. What if I want my son? Both of them. He had no answer. For the first time in all their years together, Margaret saw not certainty in his eyes, but doubt. I'm afraid that if we split everything equally, it'll start a war. And I don't want to leave behind ruins. But you already have, John. You just didn't notice. The next morning, she wrote to Ben. Just come home. Please. He replied 3 hours later, tomorrow at 6. Driving. She didn't tell John. Didn't tell Michael. She simply set the table for 4 for the first time in many years. When Ben appeared at the door, Margaret nearly cried. He'd changed, leaner, shorter hair, calmer eyes. But the same vulnerability she remembered from childhood still lingered in his gaze. Hi, Mom, he said, hugging her gently, as if afraid he might break her. Hi, sweetheart, she whispered. Welcome home. John stepped out of the living room and stopped in the doorway. Father and son stared at each other for a long moment, separated by years of silence. You look good, John finally said. You don't, Ben replied. You look tired. It wasn't defiance. It was concern. And John understood. At dinner, no one mentioned the will. They talked about the weather, Michael's kids, the new cafe in town. But tension hung in the air like a storm cloud. When Ben went to bed in his old room, where his childhood globe still sat on the desk, Margaret sat with John on the porch again. He's not the boy you remember, she said. I know, John replied. But I don't know how to be with him. How to start over? Ask him. Just ask, why did you leave? What if I don't like the answer? Then you'll know the truth. And the truth is always better than your guesses. The next morning, John knocked on Ben's door. His son opened it, surprised. Can I come in? Sure. They sat on the edge of the bed, the same spot where, years ago, John had comforted a small boy afraid of thunderstorms. Why did you leave? John asked plainly. Ben sighed. Because you always expected me to be just like Michael. You wanted me calm, responsible, proper. And I couldn't be. I felt like I disappointed you every time I chose something for myself. Even when I got into design school, you said, well, at least not music. As if that was consolation. John was silent. He remembered that day. Remembered how proud he'd been, but didn't know how to say it. So he'd hidden behind sarcasm, the old shield he always wore. I thought you wouldn't understand, Ben went on. That you'd think it was foolish. So I left to prove to myself and to you that I could be someone, even if it wasn't who you wanted me to be. I wanted you to be happy, John said softly. But you never asked what happy meant to me. The words hung in the quiet. No accusations. No excuses. Just truth, raw, awkward, but necessary. That evening, Michael arrived. Seeing Ben, he tensed at first, but then, noticing how calmly his father and brother spoke, relaxed slightly. So you're back, he said, stepping into the kitchen. For now, Ben replied. But maybe for good. Depends on everything. Margaret set coffee and pie on the table, the kind she only baked for special occasions. We're rewriting the will, she announced. Michael frowned. Mom, don't interrupt. This is our home. Our family. And the decision must be ours together. Not yours. Not Dad's. Ours. But I've been here all this time. I earned it. You earned our gratitude, she said gently. But not exclusive rights. Ben is our son too. And he has a right to this house. To these memories. To us. Michael looked at Ben. His brother didn't look away. And what do you want? Michael asked. I don't know, Ben admitted honestly. Maybe just to know I have a place to come back to even if I don't live here. Michael was silent. Then he exhaled. Fine. But if you disappear again, don't expect me to wait. I won't disappear, Ben said. Not anymore. A week later, the lawyer came to the house. All four sat at the kitchen table as John dictated the new terms. The house would be held jointly by both sons. Savings split equally. Family heirlooms divided by mutual agreement. And one condition: if either son ever decided to sell his share, the other would have first right of refusal. "This is your home," John said, looking at them. "Not my property. Not your reward. Your responsibility." Margaret placed her hand over his. For the first time in a long while, she felt peace. 2 months passed. Ben still lived in his old room, but had started looking for local work. Michael came not just on Sundays, but on weeknights too, just to talk. John began fishing again, taking each son in turn. And Margaret baked pies more often than ever. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Ben asked, "Dad, why did you write that letter? Why leave everything to me?" John gave a small smile. "Because I thought you were the only one who wouldn't leave. But I was wrong. You both left, each in your own way. And you both came back, also in your own way." "And now?" Michael asked. "Now I know inheritance isn't the house or the money. It's what you leave each other. Trust. Time. Forgiveness." Margaret smiled. The wind rustled the leaves again, but this time, it didn't sound like goodbye. It sounded like a promise. Sometimes the deepest conflicts aren't born from anger, but from fear, the fear of being misunderstood, forgotten, unworthy of love. But sometimes, all it takes is one letter, one come home, one honest conversation, to rebuild what seemed broken beyond repair. Not perfectly, not instantly, but sincerely. And that is more than enough.